Hi, I'm Sarah Hilson-Tiger, a recent university graduate, and I believe the war on drugs, although a noble idea, has failed. The negative unintended consequences far outweigh any progress that has been made. Let's go back to when this war was started. Drug prohibition has caused many unintended consequences since it was first started 40 years ago. Drug gang shootings have caused over 1,000 murders per year, many of the victims being bystanding citizens. Other violence include addicts committing crimes to support their habit. One of the biggest reasons why prohibition was put in place was to protect children. They have become one of the groups that has actually suffered the most by the drug war. For a start, 2 million children have parents in jail, leaving families without the stability and support they need. It is 6 to 7 times more likely that a child that has a parent in jail will also end up incarcerated, continuing this vicious circle. Along with issues among families, kids have an easier time getting a hold of illegal drugs, especially marijuana, than alcohol. Drug dealers also have incentive to go into schools and sell to underage buyers, since they are not required to check IDs. The U.S. is the world's leading jailer. The U.S. has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners. That's a staggering statistic for a country that prides themselves on being free. Incarcerations have substantially risen since Richard Nixon declared his war on drugs in 1971 and continues to increase due to this obsession with drug prohibition. There are well over 2.3 million inmates behind bars in the U.S., and 20% are there for drug possession alone and have no history of violence. Nonviolent, recreational drug users who have been sent to prison become unproductive members of society. Drug parolees are not eligible for government-funded education. That means that if you get caught smoking a joint, you'll be facing incarceration rather than education. Putting nonviolent drug criminals in jail creates hardened individuals who learn from other criminals while serving sentences and lose their ability to become useful members of society. 70% of parolees go back to prison because they are left with little options. They can't work, they can't afford education, so they resort to more crime. Many drug laws were rooted in racial tensions. Marijuana laws were enacted against the Mexicans who had for years smoked the plentiful crop that grew abundantly in their home country. Opium was associated with Chinese and cocaine with the Africans. These unfair judgments continue to influence drug laws. This can be seen by the racial disparity among prisoners versus actual U.S. population demographics. African Americans make up 64.7% of the prison population, and yet only 13.4% of the total population. In Mexico, growers have gained more power than the government and threaten to destabilize the country. The government is now verging on a sudden collapse. In 2008, there were over 5,000 drug-related deaths. They continue to grow more powerful and increasingly violent. Corruption among officials is also a growing issue. The amount of money and incentives for significant profits involved in the drug business is difficult to compete with. With police focused on drug-related charges, such as small possession, scarce forces impact the ability for them to properly allocate their time and impact violent crimes. Due to drugs being illegal, users don't receive the care that they require because they are scared of facing jail time. HIV and hepatitis has increased due to the sharing of dirty needles, and the obsessive search for money leads to neglect of personal health. Also, because street drugs have no screening process, impurities can be a dangerous result. Again, the U.S. was founded on principles of freedom, and the prohibition of drugs has reduced those civil liberties. 2 and 3 SWAT no-knock raids are on the wrong home, meaning innocent civilian homes are being broken into, causing unneeded violence and deaths on both sides. The environment has been adversely affected too. For every 1 pound of meth, it generates approximately 5 pounds of toxic waste. In 2007, Over 500,000 acres of Colombian rainforest was sprayed with defoliage to kill cocoa plants. There is also the issue of untraceable funding. In 1996, Gary Webb wrote a series called Dark Alliance, where he investigated Nicaraguans linked to the CIA. He reported that the CIA had been smuggling cocaine into the U.S. and funneled profits to the Contras. As one would expect, Webb's book generated great controversy. In 2004, Webb was found dead with 2 gunshots to the head. The coroner ruled it a suicide. All over the world, we are facing economic crisis, and yet in the U.S., $44 billion is spent to enforce drug prohibition. Another $33 billion is the forecasted foregone tax revenue. The soft costs of the unintended consequences, as aforementioned, are difficult to quantify, but are substantial. Additionally, all U.S. states combined spend approximately the same amount on the drug war as the U.S. federal government does. All this money is being irresponsibly spent on a policy that is not working.